Alrighty, folks. Here we are today, having a lovely, fun day. You can see my face now. We're just making transfers today. We'll see if we get any folks on here and if I can figure out how to get on the comments page. There we go. All right, we'll see who shows up here. Today, we are going to do transfers from last week's starts that we did from Spore and LC tests. We got quite a few of them here. I'll start showing them to you as I get going because I'm going to be cleaning up my tools and utensils here, setting them out, and you can watch me, and we'll see who comes in. Let me know if you're in here watching. We just gotta untwist that there. Get our torchy. And Wonder if that's how they make isobutane. Accidentally. All right, so we have a number of transfers to do here. We've got some Purple Mystic Spore, which is a pan-cyan. Blue Sky Ape liquid culture test, which looks pretty good. We got some cool odd aerial mycelium there from the start point. Kind of different. Probably a result of culture shock to some degree. Or nutrient shock, rather. Golden Halo Spore. Golden Chestnut liquid culture. We have a Men in Black Pan-Cyan, another one. This is a Red Guild variety, I believe. This is a sample that I took straight. And then we also have a water agar that I've done a cabin sequester on. And it just, the host plate that I got from the beginning didn't look so great. And it's kind of hard to tell there, but you can probably see the reflection of the mycelium. And then, of course, we just have this beautiful plate here, the Stormtrooper. I just had to pull this out to take a picture, as a matter of fact. All right. Often hard to get the perfect shot. But in a flow hood, at least you have this nice flowing air right here to kind of avoid contamination with your dirty ass phone. We'll go ahead and we'll start with our pan-cyan here, the water cabin sequester. There's some pretty good growth there. We'll pull from right along here because there's about a 1/4 inch of growth outside of the cap there. So that's what we want. We'll just take a punch and transfer it over. Next up, we'll go ahead and we'll transfer this pan cyan men in black that I did not clean up with water agar. Looks pretty healthy. Again, we'll just take a sample from this leading edge over here. Looks pretty healthy to me. Looks pretty uniform. It's always good to look on the bottom of the plate and look for the nice rounded areas. This side here and this side here both are really good, probably chunks of good places to take good samples just because it's all one genetic isolate, presumably. It could be that way just from the transfer I took as well, being misshapen. All right, next up we have our golden chestnut liquid culture test. This was one that I had sitting in the fridge for like well over a year that I got from a local guy. I'd have to look him up. Thomas Watt, I think that's his name. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, but got him a long time ago. Still looks healthy. We'll go ahead and we'll preserve this on agar. All right, next up we have our golden halo from Spore. This is a pretty healthy sample. The only areas that I see that are any concern are this area down here where you can see the little pieces missing out in here as well. Typically when it's growing outward and you see something like that, that could mean there's something in there. It's hard to say. It could have been an inconsistency in the agar. But I will probably take a transfer from this nice smooth section over here and we'll see how it turns out on the second transfer. I am using this handy dandy dab torch. So I'll hit them and then I'll set them on that little petri there. It's hard to see from where you're at, but basically they just set off the edge like so in the clean airflow. And as long as I don't touch them with my hands or let them hit the tabletop here, they do pretty well for staying sterile. Alrighty, now we've got our Blue Sky Ape liquid culture test. This one was from Mycocat, I believe. And this is the one that had that cool looking aerial mycelium. Not really sure how well you can see it there. Let's see, I'll get the camera just a little bit closer there. Like little fingers reaching for the sky right where that single drop hit. So with this one, it's pretty uniform around the edges. I don't really see anything there to be concerned about on this one. It is interesting that this lower section down here is a lot lighter in color. Doesn't necessarily mean it's unhealthy. It just may be a different genetic. Hard to say. But I will take from the brighter colored one just because that's how I am. Aesthetically, it looks pretty good. I don't know. Maybe I'll take one from each. It's hard to say. In this case, we will also be testing out this kind of orange and gold petri. I like to do this every once in a while. This is a more concentrated color than I typically do, so we'll see how well it does. Alrighty, next up we have Purple Mystic from Spore. So this is a better example of kind of a where the heck do I take a sample from plate. So there's all kinds of different growth here. This is probably the healthiest looking growth. Now, why I would say that is because looking at it up close, I can see there's straight lines of growth. It's very white, and it's a nice uniform little circle there, semicircle. Now, you also have good formation here, and it may just be just like this, but it's a little further behind in its growth potential. I would say probably what you see here is not necessarily contamination in the center, but a significant amount of genetics being in one place, all fighting for strength. And probably if I were to leave this for a couple days, you'd see that this section here would outrun the rest and create sort of a larger semicircle as it got ahead of some of the other. So in selecting this one, I will get a faster growing mycelium. That doesn't necessarily mean it will have the traits I want or that it will even be a better fruit. It just means that it's going to be more vigorous. So you can look at these other growths that are semi-transparent and see nice even growth as well and take from those and have just as good of a chance of getting a great genetic out of there. But you just have to be willing to take those and try them. That's something you do when you have extra space and you can grow out several small bags or tubs or whatever to get the genetic expression you want to see. Me in this case, because I'm just testing agar, I'm going to take the most vigorous sample and go with that. I don't do a lot of growing out. I do some here and there, but I'm not the expert with pancyans for sure. Now, one thing you might have noticed me doing there is anytime I'm taking a sample, it's always going to be the furthest up in the stream. I don't know why. That's just how I do things. To me, it makes sense that where I'm pulling from should be at the furthest point into the clean stream I can. I don't know if that truly makes a difference, but the way I see the flow hood is the further into it you go, the cleaner you are, right? Last but not least, we have blue balls here. Now, this one, it looked clean, and if you look at the leading edge, I could probably take a sample and throw it straight to regular agar and get a clean sample because it is nice and even, especially when you look along the bottom. You can see some really good rhizomorphic traits in here right along the edge where it's starting to feather out. I really like this area. But because I see this odd bruising and growing the way it is, I'm going to actually put this to water agar. I don't know what's riding along with this one, but there's got to be something in my opinion. That may not be the case. Maybe that's just how blue balls grows. I don't know. I remember there was a thing with Clockwork Orange that was similar, where everybody would get it and they're like, "Oh man, I can't grow this out. It's contaminated or something like that." And so we'll see. We're going to cabin sequester this, and we'll see what we get out of it. We've had really good success with that lately and just gotten really good rhizomorphic growth at the end of the day from it. So we'll go ahead and do it. Now, it may be kind of hard to see, but what I'm doing here is I am not taking out that whole plug. I'm actually using my blade to go in and cut that plug in half as I pull it out. The reason being is when I put it in this water agar, you're going to see that I actually get it below the surface, assuming I can get it off of my scalpel here. And that just actually puts it down there and forces it to push through. And any sort of bacteria that's riding along with it is going to be that much further away from coming out to this nice healthy plane of agar up here that we want to see. Now, before we go and put our cover on, we're going to re-sterilize our scalpel because we just took our potentially contaminated sample and untouched the tip of this to put that sample in there. So before we remove our little plate that we cut earlier, or our cover sheet of water agar, we are going to sterilize our scalpel first. And I'd say always give it a little bit to cool down. Agar likes to melt when you hit it with a hot knife, and it just really doesn't help for trying to pick something up and place it where you want it to be. It's like trying to move a piece of hot butter with a piece of butter with a hot knife. You know, it just doesn't want to hold on to it. And for your viewing pleasure while we wait, let's take a nice close look at this beautiful Storm Trooper here. I believe I actually got this from an LC test. I think this was, I'm going to say that was from Goomba. It's a pretty recent one. Maybe it was Spore. I'll have to go back and look at the videos. Okay, so our scalpel's cooled off now. We'll go ahead and transfer these little cover plates from our cabin sequester over it. You'll see what I'm talking about with the cover plates. That's what I was doing earlier, was I was cutting a little square out over here. And we'll just dive underneath of it, pick it up. Oops, try not to drop it. And bring it over, and we'll flip it. Maybe. And the reason we flip it is because when we first pull it out, this bottom can get all jacked up and be uneven. And we want the agar to kind of create a little seal around it. And it'll really force the mycelium to push out and any of the bacteria and whatnot. It's kind of lazy. It's like a couch potato. It wants to stay there. It wants to eat its potato chips. So we'll do the same. Presumably our scalpel's still clean because this is sterile water agar. Oops, almost had it. There we go. Nice and covered up. Let's give it a week, see how it looks. We should have good mycelium that comes out. As you saw on our last one, the cabin sequester worked quite well. So now I'm just going to go through and I'll label all these and wrap them. And if you all have any questions or want to comment, now's the time. Maybe I'll pull out some other ones. I think I got our water agar results from last week. So you can kind of see these. This is our iris ape that was dirty that we used water agar and cabin sequestering to clean up. And then there's one that, well, I guess that first one was a trench. This was from the cabin sequester. So for the next step, I would say it really depends on what your plate looks like. If your plate's nice and clean, like some of these, like this guy, this one's ready to go to grain, or an all-in-one bag if that's what you're going for. In my case, I just keep transferring them for the most part. I'll let things go to about 5 or 6 transfers before I go ahead and I cut those out and start new spores. But again, I'm not really running genetics. I'm not growing much. You know, I think when folks are growing, they'll probably go 1 or 2 transfers after spore at most before throwing the bags. Usually, it's pretty good to have a little bit of mixed genetics in there, in my opinion, just to encourage competition, so to speak. It seems to cause more vigorous growth in that case. But, you know, I'm sure there's a lot more to be said on that subject. Anyhow, folks, thank you for tuning in, and I had a good time here. I'm going to do the work part real quick here, which is non-glorious, and you don't need to watch me do it. So I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time on School of Rock'n Agar. Rock on, y'all. Rock on.